If you've ever watched any of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, you know that the main antagonist in the movie was the East India Company, established by Queen Elizabeth I in the year 1600. That was the first corporation in the world, and corporations have only been growing in number and power ever since. Today I'm going to talk about corporations and what's changed since then. But first, let's talk about what the benefits are of corporations to those creating it. Specifically, it limits the liability of the individual actors within the company, whether it's the board of directors of the CEO or the employees themselves. It's also good for tax benefits for the corporation. And in a lot of jurisdictions, places will actually compete against each other to give a corporation the best deals as far as taxes or possibly even subsidies. It's good for building a reputation amongst other corporations and the government. It protects brand, and nowadays, a company who is a corporation can last indefinitely. Years ago, they only lasted for a certain amount of time, in some cases 100 years, but now corporations can last forever. From the standpoint of the people who start the corporation, they're great, but for the rest of society, they aren't. Just ask India, who was colonized primarily because of the East India Company. Once the company could no longer control the ports in the areas that they took over, the British got involved. And that's really how the Second British Empire got started. Corporations have a lot of power because of their prestige and also their money. And things only got worse in America in the 1970s when corporations were given the same right of free speech that individual citizens were. And it even got worse after that by Citizens United. I'll link all this below. But companies have too much of power in this country. It limits the ability of this country to be a true representative democracy. And I think something needs to be done about this. If corporations didn't always have this power, why should they now? And again, it's only really benefiting a very few amount of people. Most of the stock market of companies that are trading publicly are owned by a fraction of the population. Even with big funds for retirement pension schemes, most of it is actually owned by rich individuals. And if the stock market gets antsy, you could lose your entire pension, conceivably, or your 401k. Companies also don't care about the externalities. In other words, the impact of what they do to either the climate, the environment, or the citizenry of a particular area. That's why the government had to get involved and create things like Superfund sites. There were areas in this country, and still are, that are so polluted people corporations even live close to them. But that doesn't stop companies and corporations from perpetually making areas too toxic for people to live. And then the government has to go and flip the bill, i.e. us. There needs to be more regulation, not less regulation in this country. The air quality needs to get better in most places. The water quality. Corporations have too much power. In a lot of cases, because of their lobbying efforts and their friendships with politicians and with, in some cases, Supreme Court justices, they end up getting whatever they want. And there isn't any penalty for these. Again, a lot of times because of the liability factor of corporations. What are your thoughts? Do corporations have too much of power, or do they have just the right amount? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.